Hi everyone and welcome. Really welcome to Bear Clooney Watches channel. As you can see, this one is starting right away from Bear Clooney Watches studio. But before we start, please allow me to invite all new viewers to subscribe to my channel. Genuine watch enthusiast channel without hidden agenda. Please subscribe. Now let's refocus on these two beautiful chronographs. First thing that crosses my mind is time flies. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been, 2-3 years since Rolex introduced a pair of these beautiful steel and Cerachrome Daytona watches. And guess what? Nothing has changed. They're still very hard to get, primarily because of the insane global demand and secondary because of the control production that Rolex implements as a respect to their customer and integrity of their product. So I put both watches together. You know, approximately a year ago, I did the presentation of this beautiful white dial Rolex Cosmograph Daytona in stainless steel and Cerachrome bezel, and it was received really well. I was lucky to acquire this in the very early stages when it came out, and loved this watch since then. Now, I was also very lucky to acquire a black dial version relatively recently, and I thought, you know what, doing another similar presentation, because technically speaking these two watches are identical, it just doesn't make sense. Now, being that I am blessed to have both pieces, I saw this as an opportunity to put them together and discuss relatively unbiased what is my aesthetic preference toward the one or the other. And the inspiration for this really came from a variety of forums and watch groups on Facebook, where people continuously debate among each other what is their preference. And then I kind of noticed that those who own this beautiful white dial always say, oh, the white dial Daytona is by far superior and better looking than black version. And those who own this beautiful black dial Daytona do the same. Oh no, black dial is just superior in every way. So, it's not often that someone owns both pieces. And I, blessed as I am, own them both. So I thought, hey, why don't I personally discuss my position on this and my affinities to one or the other. But before we start that, I want to touch on a couple of things for those who are viewing my channel for the first time, and maybe those who are unfamiliar, if that's even possible, with these two timepieces. Well, the first thing that separates them from previous version is the Rolex Cerachrome bezel, ceramic bezel, which gets its name from Cera for ceramic and chrome for color. The chrome part, I think, at least my theory is that Rolex is making statement and point that this bezel is not going to fade, it's not going to change color as its predecessors. Now, believe it or not, many watch enthusiasts, Rolex enthusiasts, are not overly impressed with that because they find the beauty in aging of the watch, and they don't necessarily like the idea that this timepiece is going to look same now and 30 or 50 years later. However, it is beautiful contemporary timepiece. The ceramic bezel certainly adds to aesthetic value of it. And as anything else, Rolex is progressing with the time. The other thing that I want to mention about this watch, it has caliber 4130. And even though that's the same automatic mechanical chronograph movement as its predecessor, reference 116520, it is different in the aspect that Rolex has redefined this movement as its superlative chronometer parameter in 2015, so that 4130 boasts a very impressive accuracy rating of -2 to +2 seconds per day. This Rolex in-house movement operates at 28,800 beats per hour and offers a power reserve of 72 hours. The center chronograph hand is accurate to 1/8 of a second. So there we go. Those are your basic technical aspects of the watch, which are quite superior. I'm not going to go into Cosmograph Daytona history. Many channels have touched on that and done a much better job than I ever will. So let's talk about these two watches from the aesthetic perspective. Well, first thing I want to mention, I often see a comment that white dial owners argue this is more heritage relevant, the white dial, and it is after all panda dial, which is always favored among the watch enthusiasts for its aesthetical reasons. Well, I have a bit of disagreement on that, because no matter how much the owners of this watch like to push the issue that this is watch which is panda dial and therefore more connected to the 60s version, it is a fact that original panda dial has completely black subdials and not just a black trim on the subdial rings. So I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a great argument. Personally, I love the aesthetics of the watch, and having just the black rings on the subdials doesn't bother me at all. But I do like to mention that in a real sense of the word, I do have a bit of an argument on, is this truly a panda dial? It does resemble panda dial, but I wouldn't call it genuine panda dial. Now, when it comes to the black dial version, argument against it, it is less heritage related. It is less of the heritage piece. Now, I don't know if that really bothers me. The thing that I immediately like about this watch, it has a substantially more wrist presence than white Daytona, because if you look carefully on the white Daytona, the black bezel makes the inner white dial kind of smaller, and I don't know. I find that this one on the wrist, and I'll have the wrist shots of both of them, appears slightly smaller wearing, and really it doesn't come to the light until you kind of look at them next to each other from the same perspective. Do you notice that black ceramic bezel with the white dial makes the dial and overall watch smaller? Do you notice that? I do. I really do. So is your affinity towards smaller size watches? Then maybe white dial would be your choice. I do like the presence of the watch, and in this case, I tend to favor black dial. Now, we were talking about these subdial rings, which on the white dial version, they're black rings. On a black dial version, you can see the trim rings are brushed stainless steel. And what I like about that stainless steel brushed appearance is the flow. And what I mean by that, the brushed portions of the bracelet, and as you can see, the bracelet on both versions is the same, so I'm not going to really spend much time on that. This brushed dial of the bracelet on the sides of the bracelet kind of nicely matches the inner rings of the subdials. And I think that results in the relative additional contributes additionally to the balance of this watch, to the flow of the watch itself. So, on the other hand, the black rings here tend to complement the bezel. And that is something that many of us will appreciate. However, I think that my preference goes toward the black dial version with the brushed steel inner subdials rings, for the simple reason aesthetically they contribute to the balance and flow of the watch. Also, the one thing that I find, because of the black dial background, the black bezel on a black dial version tends to have the tachymeter engravings kind of more prominent. They tend to stand out nicer, and I find, if you look carefully to the one on the left and to the one on the right, you kind of notice that engraving on the black dial Daytona pops nicer. So, from the heritage point of view, from the connection of the Rolex Cosmograph Daytona to its roots, I think wide dial certainly has its favorable position. And also to those who tend to like watches that wear smaller. Now, from the aesthetic and purely aesthetic point of view, I tend to favor the black dial version for the already mentioned reasons. Obviously, these differences are minute. They're so small that, they're not probably even worth argument or discussion. And even though I started this with the whole concept of being unbiased, it is a personal point of view. And personal point of view is always going to have a bias from our inner thoughts, from our inner being, from our experiences and what makes us who we are. I just love owning both of these watches. And I personally find that they are both beautiful and they both belong in great line of Rolex Cosmographs Daytonas. If you are lucky to own either one of them, enjoy them and ultimately appreciate the fact that you have something that many desire and you have. I hope that this video will not upset anyone. I hope that it just simply gives my point of view, and I hope that I successfully explain why that is. At the end, once again, I invite you to subscribe to my channel, to support genuine watch enthusiasts without hidden agenda, and as always, all the best to all of you, my friends.